Well, good afternoon, everyone, or maybe good morning or evening, depending where you're joining us from. Welcome back here to the launch pad and our live coverage of tonight's farewell and undocking of the Crew Dragon, carrying the first ever fully private crew that has visited the International Space Station, the AX1 crew. This has been a long awaited coverage for pretty much everybody, as this crew was originally planning a 10-day mission in space with 8 days aboard the International Space Station. Now, having spent over 16 days in space, over almost 2 weeks on the space station, a much longer mission than planned, but due to weather in the recovery zone, they got a little bit more than they bargained for, and got some more days up there, which I'm sure they're not complaining about. I'm sure they're excited to come home, but will miss being up on station. As always, welcome here to the Launchpad. My name is Zach. Here at the Launchpad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and you're joining us for our live coverage of tonight's farewell and undocking of the crew. Splashdown is scheduled for 1:06 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, and we will be live for that about an hour and a half before that, so we hope you'll join us then. But tonight we're going to be watching hatch closure and undocking, expected to take place in about 15 minutes from now, hatch closure, and we will be monitoring for that to take place. As always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat, and we'll be answering them live as we go through tonight. Undocking set to occur a couple hours from now. So what's going to happen is NASA's going to actually take a break in their feed, showing that tonight's coverage is mainly with the NASA portion of it, as it has to do with station. But we'll be staying live in between those two sections, showing you a live location of the International Space Station. Right now, it's currently passing over the eastern part of Russia on its way to begin reaching its highest point on its orbit, to begin heading back down towards the United States. But we're expecting NASA to get underway here in the next 60 seconds or so, so we'll be patching those in. But as always, as we get started, let us know where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to welcome you here. Take a moment, hit the like button. It really does help us out. And share out the broadcast, as we are finally going to watch AX1 begin their journey home here tonight. Chuck, I'm the same way. I can't wait to get my patch. It's great to see so many regulars in here. Kathy, Jeffrey, Virginia. Great to see you all in here. Eytan, Kevin, good to see you. John, thanks for being here. If you haven't yet, take a moment and check out our shop as well while we're going through this evening. We do have our SLS gear still up there. SLS preparing for its rollout back to the VAB, later this week. But looks like NASA's getting underway, so let's listen in to NASA Mission Control as we await the hatch closure and undocking of AX1.
Evening. Inside is the crew of the Axiom Mission 1. You can see a few of the crew members suited in their SpaceX launch and entry suits. Thank you for joining us. Today is April 24th. We're witnessing the conclusion of Axiom Mission 1. The four private astronauts, are about to enter the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, the Axiom Mission 1 capsule, for the journey home in a splashdown off the coast of Florida. The two mission specialists of the mission, Eytan, Stibbe, and Mark Pathy, are in their launch and entry suits. Some hugs and handshakes, farewells for the crew on board the International Space Station, the Expedition 67 crew. Namely, inside Node 1 for the Expedition 67 crew is the crew of Crew 3, SpaceX's other capsule attached to the International Space Station's forward port. SpaceX Dragon Endurance. It includes NASA astronauts Raja Chari, Kayla Barron, and Tom Marshburn, and European Space Agency astronaut Matthias Maurer. Of course, to round out the Axiom Mission 1 crew, we have the commander of the mission, Michael López-Alegría, and the pilot, Larry Connor. López-Alegría and Connor are responsible for getting the other mission specialists situated in their launch and entry suits and getting the Dragon configured for the journey home. What we're witnessing now is the final moments before the crew is about to ingress the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour and close the hatch. Per the nominal timeline, the hatch closure is scheduled for about 20 minutes from now, and that will kick off a sequence of other events to prepare for undocking about 2.5 hours from this moment. After several delays due to weather, the SpaceX, Axiom, and NASA teams were able to give a go for an undocking tonight at 7:55 p.m. Central Time. With a 7:55 p.m. Central Time undocking, it will be about a 16-hour journey in space in low Earth orbit until they splash down off the coast of Florida about just a little after 12 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, April 25th, or after 1 p.m. Central Time, or 1 p.m. Eastern Time, off the coast of Florida. There are several landing sites that the teams are monitoring for weather. The prime landing site as of this evening is Jacksonville, Florida. The Axiom crew saying their goodbyes to Expedition 67. It's been quite a journey. What was originally scheduled for 8 days aboard the orbiting laboratory turned into 15. A crew of 11 passengers on board the International Space Station have been working harmoniously throughout those 15 days on a variety of experiments, both in support of the Expedition 67 mission, the long-duration stay aboard the International Space Station, and the first private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. Included more than 25 different experiments for the crew of 4 private astronauts conducting in the orbiting laboratory.
Station Houston on 2 for Tom and SSCs at your convenience.
Again, Expedition 67 crew members and Axiom Mission 1 crew members in Node 2. The Dragon is on the zenith port, or the space-facing side, so towards the ceiling is where the crew members will be ingressing and entering their Dragon. In the foreground there you see NASA astronaut Caleb Barron, part of the final farewell for the Axiom crew. Tom Marshburn floating off to the right there into the Columbus module. Marshburn will take the prime responsibility for monitoring the departure of Dragon. Just before we started our coverage, Marshburn was setting up his monitoring tools, making sure they were all good.
Hey, Tom. We still need to downlink some data from 2 of the Axiom crew members' SSCs. It's SSC 10 and SSC 19. From Roger's crew note earlier, we think that SSC 10 is an endurance. So just at your convenience, if you can get those 2 SSCs on the network, we'd appreciate it so we can get that data. One other thing for you, if you guys are willing, we'd be happy to have a camera on in Node 2. We'd appreciate the entertainment.
Okay, you can copy that, Laura. So you're looking for 10 and 19 to get those hooked back up to the network. We'll check to see if 10's in endurance. And Node 2 camera will point it at the hatch. We've got half the crew that's headed in there and the other half going in, so we'll set that up.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
What you're hearing is some of the several steps to get the Axiom crew situated before that hatch is closed, making sure they have all of their items and all the check boxes have been verified, that the teams both inside the Dragon capsule as well as the teams on the ground can give a go for proceeding for undocking. We did hear prior to the start of our coverage at the 2.5-hour mark that the International Space Station flight control teams gave their go to proceed, the weather continuing to look good for the landing opportunities off the eastern coast of Florida. So they gave the go to proceed with the steps to go ahead and close the hatch.
No 2 Cam 1 is up and on.
Copy, thank you. We'll be coming on board.
Endeavour, this is LA from Seat 3. How do you hear?
And Endeavour, this is SpaceX on the big loop. We heard you probably about 2x5 on space to ground 2 there. How me?
This is LA responding on the big loop. How copy?
And LA, I've got you about 2x5 there on the big loop. How me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, copy that. At this point in time, can I get a comm check from the pilot in seat 2 on the big loop?
He cannot. He had an earpiece fall out, so he's off trying to fix that.
Okay, copy that. Had an earpiece fall out, so he's fixing that. When he is ready, go ahead and give me a call on the big loop.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're following along with the procedures to get the crew ready to go ahead and close the hatch and get ready for an on-time docking tonight, 7:55 p.m. Central Time. Part of that is configuring what's called the Big Loop. This is an integrated communications loop between the NASA, SpaceX, and Axiom teams. So the space-to-ground loops that you hear on board the International Space Station are fully integrated with the communications on board SpaceX Dragon Endeavour. What you were just hearing was a communications check on board the spacecraft, on board Dragon Endeavour. They're working through the procedures to make sure that they are configured with the right communications loop, and the audio is coming in crystal clear. Again, the Axiom Mission 1 commander is Michael López-Alegría. We'll also be hearing from Axiom 1 or AX1 pilot Larry Connor. This is Mission Control Houston, now getting a shot inside the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour vehicle of the AX1 mission. You're seeing the commander of the mission, Michael López-Alegría, floating, getting the Dragon itself situated, preparing for the crew members of the AX1 mission. As commander, he'll be one of the last to get suited in the SpaceX launch and entry suits. Of course, you have seen in Node 2 already in their suits the mission specialist, Eytan Stibbe, and Mark Pathy. They'll be flanking the outside seats that you see from this view during the journey home. López-Alegría will take the seat, the second from the right. Underneath the seats, you're seeing all the cargo that comes with the Axiom crew back for a splashdown off the coast of Florida. During the past couple of days, including earlier this morning, the crew finished up packing the last of that cargo, some of which includes about more than 200 pounds of science and hardware, some of which is NASA science, including some biological experiments. The Crew 3 astronauts no stranger to the SpaceX launch and entry suits, helping out the mission specialists get their suits situated, perfectly fit for the journey home. The Crew 3 astronauts, including Rajachari, Tom Marshburn, and Caleb Barron of NASA, and Matthias Maurer of the European Space Agency, ESA, also took a Dragon capsule up to the International Space Station, SpaceX Dragon Endurance. That's at the far side, just behind them, towards the forward end of the International Space Station. You're now seeing a live view from Node 2 at the very forward end of the International Space Station, looking up at the zenith port of the International Space Station. This is the port where the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, the Axiom Mission 1 vehicle, is docked. In the foreground there is International Space Station Commander and NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn.
Houston Station on 2 for SSC follow-up.
Go ahead, Raja.
I just wanted to clarify the SSC 19 you were talking about. Is that one already on the network, or were you saying you can't see that?
We cannot see it on the network.
Okay, copy. We think that's the airlock one, so Kayla's going to take a look at that, and 10 will be back up on the network shortly.
Copy, thanks.
SpaceX Endeavour, C2 on the big go. Pathy, copy.
And Larry, I've got you 5x5 from C2 on the big loop. How me?
Mike, great to hear your voice. I hear you 5x5.
Okay, copy that. Standby 1. I just want to do one quick check here, but that will complete our first test for the audio checkouts on C2 and C3. So standby 1 for some further action.
Mike, if I could, one slight clarification. You're just slightly scratchy, but very audible.
Copy. Slightly scratchy, but still audible.
you're just joining us, you're getting a live view of the International Space Station. On the right, you see a lab view from the U.S. lab into Node 2, the forward end of the International Space Station. Docked to the zenith side, or the space-facing side, you can see them all looking up almost towards the ceiling. That's on the view on the left. That's the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour is docked there. On the other side of the hatch is the Axiom Mission 1 crew. They're getting situated, preparing for closing the hatch and going through the sequence of getting ready for undocking tonight at 7:55 p.m. Central Time. You've heard some of the communications checks from on board the Dragon, from the pilot of the mission, of the AX1 mission, Larry Connor, the mission specialist flanking both sides of the middle seats. So on the far sides of the Dragon include mission specialist Eytan Stibbe and mission specialist Mark Pathy. The AX1 commander is Michael López-Alegría. And taking some photos in the hatch right now is the commander of the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn. His duties today include preparing the private astronauts for their undocking. He'll also be taking the prime responsibility of monitoring the procedure from the International Space Station. In the foreground there, grabbing his launch and entry suit, is mission specialist Mark Pathy. You can see by the Canadian flag representing Canada on this mission. Seated in the middle seats, more towards the foreground here, you can see the pilot of the mission, Larry Connor. And then to his right, in the commander position, is Michael López-Alegría.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, comm check.
SpaceX Endeavour have you loud and clear on the big loop.
And Larry, I have you 5x5 from seat 2. Can I also get a comm check from MLA in seat 3 on the big loop?
From the seat 3, how do you hear?
Okay, LA, I still probably have you about, I would say, 2x5, but this does complete the test that we wanted to do for audio troubleshooting. When able, you and Larry can swap back to your original seats.
So a minor correction, while we were getting that view inside the Dragon, on the middle left seat is the pilot position. However, Michael López-Alegría is currently seated in that position with pilot Larry Connor in the commander seat. They'll of course swap back for the flight home, but in the meantime, during these audio checks, they have swapped seats. Again, Commander Tom Marshburn, International Space Station Commander, in the hatchway between the International Space Station and Crew Dragon Endeavour, snapping some photos, watching the crew getting some of their some of their items ready, and of course their suits on, getting through some of those procedures, preparing for an undock tonight. Again, that's 7:55 p.m. Central Time. He'll take the prime role of monitoring the undocking and exit through the what's called approach ellipsoid. That marks the end of joint operations. From there, NASA will, of course, be watching, but the prime responsibility and role of getting the private astronauts home falls to the SpaceX and Axiom Space teams. In the foreground there, you see to the right is Mission Specialist Mark Pathy. Climbing into the pilot seat is the pilot. That is Axiom Mission 1 pilot Larry Connor. Eytan Stibbe in the background there, also not in his launch and entry suit. He and Pathy will get situated in the suit prior to undock. The suit is required for the dynamic phases of the mission. That includes the undocking phase, when the Dragon itself physically separates from the International Space Station. The suits themselves provide an extra layer of protection. During the 16-hour transit, they will have the opportunity to remove the suits and air them out, get a little bit more comfortable, have a meal. It's about a 16-hour journey from undocking until they actually splash down off the coast of Florida. But of course, before that final sequence of preparing for the deorbit burn and the re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere.
Endeavour, this is Houston on the Big Loop. We'll take voice checks from each of you at your convenience.
And to those just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our live coverage of the hatch closure and undocking of the SpaceX Axiom Space AX-1 crew. Crew running just slightly behind schedule on the planned time for hatch closure, but they were doing some extra mic checks there on the big loop as they prep here. You can see Mark still not in his suit, but getting everything ready on station, putting the footrests into place. And just they've all got steps on what needs to be prepared as they get ready to depart the International Space Station a number of days after when they were supposed to, now already being in space 6 extra days compared to the targeted 10-day mission with 8 days on ISS. If it's your first time here, take a moment, hit the like button. It really helps us out here at the launch pad. We cover everything space, all launches, landings, spacewalks, press conferences, and exclusive interviews. And we're glad to have you here. To give you a rundown of what to expect tonight, we're expecting live views from NASA and SpaceX through hatch closure. Then we're going to have a break in live views from onboard Dragon until undocking. But we're not going to be going anywhere. We're going to be tracking ISS live there, as you can see on the right side of your screen, all the way through undocking. Then tonight we'll take a break of our live views and come back first thing in the morning as we count down to re-entry burn and splashdown tomorrow, targeting 1:06 p.m. Eastern. Crews currently targeting the Jacksonville splashdown zone, the furthest northeast site of the 7 locations that Crew Dragon can splash down, but both Sharon and Megan, the Crew Dragon recovery ships, are deployed in the Gulf and in the Atlantic, ready to bring their crews home wherever needed. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat, tagging us at the launch pad. We love answering your questions. Take a moment, though, hit that like button, really helps us out. Share out the broadcast, and we're going to continue listening in to SpaceX and NASA and the International Space Station and Crew Dragon Big Loop. At times there may be calm breaks in there, but we want to listen in and hear the live interactions of Dragon and Station as they prepare for hatch closure in the near future.
And just a little.
We've been having trouble with it. I have you landing there for what it's worth.
Yep, copy. We are expecting that.
So a quick rundown of the sequence that we'll see over the next couple of hours. Of course, we're still waiting for the hatch closure. We'll continue our coverage until we see the Dragon hatch close. That is, of course, one of several hatches that have to close to begin the undocking sequence. Another critical hatch is the what's called the A-pass hatch. It's the hatch closest to the Dragon hatch. Once that's closed, there will be a space in between the two hatches called the vestibule. And both of those are required to be closed to depressurize the space in between the International Space Station and the Dragon. That sets up for the Dragon to be able to undock. That sequence is set to, once the Dragon hatches are closed, that sequence will be about an hour long. Once the pressure in between the vestibule has to go from about the pressure inside the International Space Station, which is about the pressure of sea level on Earth, so a little over 14 pounds per square inch. So that has to go down to vacuum. In that time, it takes a pit stop at about 5 pounds per square inch, and they sit there for a little bit to do a leak check and make sure that the pressure itself is holding and there are no leaks before they actually proceed down to vacuum. Now they stay there for a little bit because there's a little bit of oscillation in the pressure to get a good reading before they can confidently say that there are no leaks, and then they proceed down to vacuum. If we stick to the timeline as we see it now, that sequence should be complete right about the time that we start our coverage for undocking. We're scheduled to start our undocking coverage tonight around 7:30 p.m., right before the scheduled undocking time at 7:55. Once we start our coverage, the teams will be preparing for a go, no-go poll. One final step, of course, they did say go at the 2.5-hour mark prior to undocking to proceed with the following steps. But it's one final check to make sure everything looks good, including weather, down at the landing sites. Before they go ahead and proceed with the undocking command. The undocking command now is scheduled to take place at about 7:50 p.m. It's about a 5-minute sequence once that command is initiated. It begins the retraction of the umbilicals that have been providing power and communications, data in between the Dragon and the International Space Station. That will retract. And right now, the Dragon is being held to the International Space Station by a hard mate of 12 hooks. They'll release them 6 at a time, and to release any stiction, they'll do a couple of what's called undocking burns. They're very short pulses to actually physically separate the Dragon from the International Space Station. That undocking burn and the physical separation, again scheduled 7:55 p.m. Central. When we start our coverage, we'll be joined by our colleagues at SpaceX and Axiom Space over in Hawthorne. You're now getting a view of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. The teams here working together with the teams at Axiom Space and at SpaceX to oversee the operations that we're covering right now, the ingress of the private astronaut crew of Axiom Mission 1 and the hatch closure. The teams here are support the International Space Station flight operations, monitoring the International Space Station vehicle as a whole, and of course the Expedition 67 crew aboard. For this shift, for the Orbit 3 shift, we're led by Flight Director Rebecca Wingfield. The voice you're hearing as the Capcom here in the room, that's communicating with the Expedition 67 crew, namely, but also with the private astronaut crew on occasion, is Capcom Laura Beachy. Now getting some of those views from space back, we have some pretty good coverage throughout our coverage of the hatch closure of Axiom Mission 1, so these gaps will be pretty intermittent and short, luckily, for our coverage, and of course we'll continue to provide live views until the hatch between the Dragon and the International Space Station is closed, the Dragon hatch.
Houston, Endeavour, we're in step 3.4 and checking for debris. Correction, we're in 3.4. We're checking for desired LIO configuration.
Endeavour, this is SpaceX. We're with you in step 3.4. We're looking for Mark to swap into LIO cartridge 1. How copy?
Yeah, Mike, it's in work. We'll advise.
Okay, copy that, Larry. And just for your guys' awareness, we're still doing pretty good here on the timeline, about 5 minutes behind what we have scheduled, but no concerns.
I mean, that's 5 minutes behind in monitoring.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're getting live views from inside the cabin of SpaceX Dragon Endeavour. The Axiom Mission 1 crew situated, going through their procedures, getting ready for undocking later tonight. At the communications, in the pilot seat, you see AX1 Commander Larry Connor talking with the SpaceX mission director about some of the procedures, including LIO canisters, that's lithium hydroxide, canisters that are responsible for scrubbing carbon dioxide in the Dragon cabin throughout the transit from the International Space Station to Earth, which is of course for this particular undocking, the transit time is a little more than 16 hours. In their seats, you see Larry Connor in the foreground. In the background, in the commander seat, AX1 Commander Michael López-Alegría. To the right of the frame there is International Space Station Commander and NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn, just helping out the private astronaut crew, mission specialists getting situated in their launch and entry suits. You can see off in the back there. Marshburn helping out mission specialist Eytan Stibbe with the launch and entry suits. Off frame, but probably either behind or to the right, is the other mission specialist. You can see the empty seat in the very foreground there on the bottom left of your screen. That seat meant for mission specialist Mark Pathy. In the background, still donning or putting on his launch and entry suit, mission specialist Eytan Stibbe, being aided by International Space Station Commander and NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn you see in the bottom right of your frame. You heard from the SpaceX mission director. We're slightly behind the timeline as we go through our procedures tonight, just about 5 minutes. Still trending towards being able to undock at the anticipated 7:55 p.m. Central Time tonight. But we'll continue to track as they work their way through these procedures, and again, we'll continue to cover live here until the hatch for Dragon is closed. After the hatch to Dragon is closed, there's a number of procedures that take place, and we'll be off air for the remainder of the hatch closing, including the APAS hatch and the hatch in between Node 2 and the Pressurized Mating Adapter 3 that's on the space-facing port. That's the Pressurized Mating Adapter that leads, it's the sort of tunnel that you were seeing earlier that leads to the Dragon hatch, and of course inside the Dragon vehicle that we're seeing here. Now again, in about the 2.5-hour mark prior to undocking, the space station mission control teams did a poll to make sure that we were still go from a space station perspective, and of course from a weather perspective, trajectory perspective, making sure everything was good for a docking tonight and a splashdown off the coast of Florida, scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. The splashdown time is a little bit after 1 p.m. Eastern Time, precisely 1:06 p.m. For an on-time splashdown of the AX1 crew, the teams will quickly get together and continue to monitor the opportunities for the Crew 4 launch, which is at the heels of this mission. Of course, the International Docking Adapter ports on the International Space Station currently occupied by 2 Crew Dragons. We need to undock this one in order to make room for the Crew 4 Dragon Freedom.
Endeavour, LIO configured at 2315.
Copy that, Endeavour. LIO configured at 2315. At this time, you're go to proceed with the IMV teardown and hatch closure per 2.103.
In work.
Those LiO canisters, again, lithium hydroxide that scrub carbon dioxide from the Dragon cabin on the 16-hour transit. Once the hatches are closed and once we're no longer relying on space station air, which you see, the ventilation ducts that supplied space station air to the Dragon are being removed, so now we'll be moving over to relying on the SpaceX Dragon Endeavor's environmental control and life support systems for the journey home, just making sure that everything's configured properly. Again, that journey home 16-hour splashdown tomorrow afternoon, shortly after 1 p.m. That sets us up for a launch of Crew 4 Dragon Freedom, which the destination is, of course, the International Space Station and the port that the Axiom crew is going to leave from. Now, the turnaround time, the scheduled launch time for Crew 4 is 3:52 and 55 seconds a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, the 27th. The transit time to the International Space Station is a little more than 17 hours, 22 minutes for same-day arrival of 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time on the 27th, 8:15 p.m. Central Time. 1:15 a.m. on Thursday, the 28th GMT. Teams will continue to monitor the weather and other systems to ensure for that launch opportunity, and can of course readdress launch options should they need it. Another loss of signal. In the meantime, we'll show you the docking ports and where we're at right now. You can see lots of visiting vehicles on board the International Space Station. The Axiom Mission 1 Dragon, SpaceX Dragon Endeavour taking the Zenith port. You can see they were working what looked like the ceiling if you were inside the International Space Station. And then, of course, on the forward end is the SpaceX Crew 3 Dragon Endurance.
Any crew member, if you could just confirm for us that you can hear the Endeavour crew from station, we'd appreciate that.
Capcom Laura Beachy reaching out to the International Space Station crew, making sure the communications are solid. They are, of course, in the graphic here in the Dragon that's on the Zenith or space-facing side. Once that undocks, that's where the Crew 4 Dragon or SpaceX Dragon Freedom will dock if launched on time on early Wednesday morning. It will dock late Wednesday evening. Again, the handovers we're expecting here will be relatively brief. We're getting some pretty good video and audio communications all around for these procedures as we're witnessing the private astronaut crew ingressing, entering the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, the Axiom Mission 1 crew vehicle for the ride home. Undocking tonight, scheduled 7:55 p.m. Central Time. There is a window of opportunity of about an hour in case there's any flexibility needed, but as the SpaceX mission director reported, right now we're just a little bit behind the timeline, but could possibly make it up during the next procedures of closing various hatches and depressurizing the vestibule in between the two hatches, the Dragon hatch and the International Space Station hatch, getting ready for that undocking tonight. You're getting a live view from inside SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, the Axiom Space crew of private astronauts working through their procedures to get buckled up, situated, make sure the carbon dioxide canisters and communications are all set for their undocking. They're being aided in the hatchway there that you're seeing from this shot. This camera being positioned in node 2, pointing straight up or towards the space-facing side, the Zenith side.
The hatch in 3.8.
SpaceX copies.
And there you have it, the International Space Station Commander, NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn, working on closing the hatch.
SpaceX Endeavour hatches.
Copy that, Larry. We see the same. Ground is going to be commanding the flight computer state here shortly, at which point in time Eytan will be able to confirm his final step in location 1.
Copy that, Mike.
And you heard it confirmed from the AX1 pilot, Larry Connor. The hatches to the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour and the private astronaut crew inside were closed at 6:26 p.m. Central Time. Now, a sequence of events will occur in between our coverage. We're going to wrap up here shortly, but in the meantime, what will happen is on the other side of the hatch, the International Space Station Commander Tom Marshburn, his job is not done. He's got a couple more hatches that he has to close, including the A-Pass hatch. Of course, he's taking some photography, making sure there's no FOD or foreign object debris, making sure that the hatch has an airtight seal before he continues methodically, step by step, to close the hatches and begin the depressurization sequence. Once those hatches are closed, it's going to create an area in between the two hatches called the vestibule, which will be at the space station pressure above 14 pounds per square inch. We got to get that down to zero near vacuum. It's a very methodical process that takes about an hour, so we'll continue to monitor that while we're off air, and then of course we'll go through the sequence of undocking. Once the undocking command is sent, it'll be about 5 minutes of hatches unlatching and umbilicals retracting, and of course a couple of thrusts to actually physically push the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour away from the International Space Station. We're still tracking towards an undocking on time for now at 7:55 p.m. Central Time. Stay tuned for our coverage. We'll be joined by SpaceX and Axiom Space for our undocking coverage, where you can get the latest undocking times, and we'll be covering the operations as they undock and exit the approach ellipsoid. This is about a 1 kilometer sphere, a little bit more than that, around the International Space Station. It's really a marker for the end of joint operations. Once they're outside of the vicinity of the International Space Station, the flight of the AX1 private astronauts and the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour to a splashdown off the coast of Florida is truly in the hands of SpaceX and Axiom Space. But in the meantime, that'll do it for us here in Mission Control Houston and NASA TV for our coverage. Again, we'll be staying tuned and for all of the procedures. Right now, our coverage for undocking is scheduled to start at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.
And for those just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our continuing live coverage of the hatch closing and docking of AX1 from the International Space Station. Hatch close confirmed at 7:26 p.m. Eastern. They're taking a break, but don't go anywhere. We're staying live. We're expecting live views to begin again on board Dragon and the ISS in about an hour's time from now. But in that time, we're going to be taking time to answer your questions live, so you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We'll be answering those throughout this period of time while tracking the current position of the International Space Station, currently passing just over the continent of Africa. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name is Zach. I'm the host here at the Launchpad. Here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're glad to have you all here. If you haven't yet, you can follow us over on Twitter, where we live tweet space events as they happen or breaking news, and join us over on Discord. We got a bunch of people hanging out in there. It's free to join. We've got Joker, Ty, and Marcus hanging out in there. You can head on over to live comms if you want to actually talk with people that are watching this undocking and on their way home of the AX1 crew. Kevin Wise, can you explain my question from earlier aloud? The one about the Navy tradition. I know there were things that you can't type because of character limits. Appreciate it, Kevin. Yeah, so Kevin asked earlier, we've heard before a bell being run on board the ISS when the crews are coming or going. Is that a as it happens thing, or is that something that happens every time? That happens every time any vehicle or ship is visiting or departing the International Space Station. It stretches from the Navy times. I don't know the whole tradition of it, but I do know it's something that has happened with Shuttle and with Soyuz and is continued on with Crew Dragon. It's just a symbolizing of an arrival or a departing of a craft, or in the Navy when it was a ship. So that's something that we see every time. It occurs after hatch closing at the actual moment of undocking. It's also to just alert everyone on board about or in the region what's happening. So, right now there were 11 people on station. Now it's back down to 7. But, they might not all be right there at the hatch to know what's happening. So they ring the bell and it notifies everyone on station on what is occurring. But for those just joining us, the hatch has been closed, confirmed at 7:26 p.m. Eastern Time. Right now, undocking is still on target for 8:55 p.m. Eastern. NASA expected to resume their coverage in less than an hour with live views on board of Dragon and the International Space Station as we get ready to watch the first ever fully private crew mission depart the International Space Station and begin their journey home almost a week late due to recovery weather. But right now we're hearing, I believe it was 2 to 3 meter swells in all the recovery zones. But right now they are targeting the Jacksonville recovery zone, which is the furthest northeast location on the East Coast. And they do have 4 options in the Gulf Coast as well, should they need to. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat. Take us at the Launchpad. We'll be answering those live throughout this about 1 hour period where we have a little bit of break of mission control comms. And stay with us right here on the Launchpad for our continuing coverage of the hatch closure, undocking, and return of AX1.
SpaceX Endeavour, copy all.
Houston Station on 2, ready in step 7.4 for IMD to be deactivated.
Tom, you've got to go to proceed.
Copy, continuing in 7.4 and subsequent.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for status.
SpaceX Endeavour on the big loop. Go ahead.
Okay, Larry, just got 2 updates for you. First is that we are moving into the Vestibule Depress. We were a little bit behind schedule there, but we do have plenty of margin in our undock window, roughly about 90 minutes. I'll copy.
Yeah, a little bit behind schedule, but you got plenty of margin, Mike.
Good words. Second item I have is that we have just configured the hex bypass to be controlled by you guys as the crew, so you do have control via 4.080 for temperature. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Have control 4.080 of the temperature. Thanks.
No problem. And then the last item that I have is that while we're waiting here for the vestibule, we are going to follow up with you shortly about some additional audio troubleshooting that we had planned to take on seat 2. I'll copy.
Yeah, copy that. You're going to follow up with us on additional troubleshooting for seat 2. Appreciate the effort.
Good words.
Communication station on 2, 7.6 complete. No 2 overhead hatch and Endeavour closed. SSC 6 will be the SSC in just a few minutes for photos downlink.
Copy, SSC 6. Thanks, Tom. There's not much comm for Houston from here on out, so everyone here in Houston, we just wanted to pass on our thank yous to you and the rest of the Expedition 67 crew for being gracious hosts to LA, Larry, Eytan, and Mark. Thanks to NASA, Axiom, and SpaceX for this successful historic mission, and then to the Endeavour crew, thanks for visiting ISS, and we're looking forward to seeing you all home safely.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Houston and all the control centers. It's been a busy but enjoyable week, and it's really nice for all of us to be a little part of history here.
Houston and Endeavour, let us also chime in and collectively thank you and all the stations for just an outstanding couple-week period of time and support.
Thanks, Larry. Have a safe trip home.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for Seat 2 audio troubleshooting test.
Mike, go ahead for the Seat 2 audio check.
Okay, Larry, so on the ground side of things, we are ready to step into our troubleshooting. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be swapping from the left audio board to the right audio board and then requesting that Seat 2 makes a comm check on the big loop. So I'll be following up with you when we've performed that commanding. Once that has been configured, we'll request that Seat 2 raise their box to their original setting and just kind of configure how they normally would. How copy?
Yeah, I copy all, and we'll be standing by for further instructions on Seat 2 responding on the big loop.
Good readback. I'll let you know when that commanding has been completed. And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, the Seat 2 commanding has been completed. At this time, we are requesting that Seat 2 perform a comm check on the big loop.
Good afternoon. It is Sunday, April 24th, and you're looking at a live view of Dragon Endeavour spacecraft as we await its departure from the International Space Station on its way back to planet Earth. We expect Endeavour to push away from the space station at 5:55 p.m. Pacific time with Axiom astronauts Michael López-Alegría, Larry Connor,
been completed.
Eytan, Stibbe, and Mark Pathy that you see on screen. A short while ago, the Axiom 1 crew suited up and the Dragon and station hatches were sealed in preparation for departure. We are joining you from SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Andy Tran, and I'm a quality engineer here at SpaceX. Joining me today is Trisha Bhattacharya, a crew systems group lead at Axiom Space. And monitoring the action from NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, is NASA's Public Affairs Officer.
Yes, Mike made 2 calls to you on the big loop from seat 2.
Okay, copy that, Larry. Stand by here while we just talk a little bit about that one on the ground.
Quite a lot has happened.
Here, what changes to the inner and Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. With that, we have completed our troubleshooting steps here. On the ground, we're going to swap back to our original configuration, let you know when that is complete, and then have seat 2 make another comm check back on the big loop. How copy?
Yeah, Mike, understand you're going to swap back to the original configuration. Once you do, you'll contact us, and then we'll have seat 2 try another comm check on the big loop.
Good words.
Eyes have been on the weather.
Yep, wind speeds have been a challenge for the last several days.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. With that, we have completed our for audio troubleshooting are complete, requesting that seat 2 make a comm check on the big loop.
Operations engineer on the right-hand side communicating with the astronauts in the Dragon capsule. Looks like they were troubleshooting some communication issues, but things continuing to progress and go well. But tomorrow is looking like a great day to bring the AX1 crew home. For return, we look at a number of weather items. Some of the obvious ones are no rain or chance of lightning in the recovery zone, both for the safety of the crew inside the capsule and the recovery teams on the water. We also look for wind speeds less than 10 miles per hour and relatively calm seas so we can safely perform recovery operations, which includes landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly our crew back to shore.
With the weather now looking good, we're very excited to bring you live coverage of the beginning of the return to Earth of AX1, the first all-private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. This webcast will follow the crew.
On the big loop, can we we get another comm check from seat 2 on the big loop?
Spacecraft up with its landing zone. Then the action starts to pick up pace with trunk separation, closure of the nose cone.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, can we get another comm check from seat 2 on the big loop?
Mike, LA has tried you twice on the big loop. And then prior to that, he tried you twice.
And copy that, Larry. We're seeing that on the ground and have been talking about that. Can we go ahead and have LA give us a comm check on Dragon to ground?
Didn't work.
So it does look like we are continuing to troubleshoot some communication issues. But for tomorrow, after we do the phasing burn, we'll continue with trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, re-entry, then deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and finally splashdown off the coast of Florida, at which point our teams will recover the AX-1 crew. Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow at 10:06 a.m. Pacific time, followed by the crew getting picked up by sea by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels.
And as a reminder, just like its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. Let's go now to Gary Jordan at NASA's Johnson Space Center to hear about how the crew has been preparing for their return and what we can expect from here until Dragon departs from the station. Gary?
Hey, thanks, Tricia and Andy. What a wonderful time this is to be with you guys for the end of the Axiom Mission 1. It's been an eventful 15 days on board the International Space Station. They got a lot done, but of course, we've been doing a lot just today and in the previous days to get ready for this moment. Over the past couple of days, the crew has been loading the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, their capsule for the AX1 mission, with cargo and just preparing for the undocking sequence. So they loaded about 200 pounds of science and hardware on board. They got in their launch and entry suits, and then they, of course, closed the hatch. That happened about 6:26 p.m. Central Time, a little bit earlier. And then, of course, we broke our coverage for the depressurization of the vestibule. Right now, the vestibule in between the Dragon hatch and the APAS hatch, or the International Space Station hatch, is down to vacuum. But we're in a 30-minute leak check period. So because of that, we're going to go ahead and delay the undocking time by about 20 minutes. The new target time for undocking the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour tonight is 8:15 p.m. Central Time, 6:15 p.m. Pacific. The teams, again, are in a holding period now as they're undergoing leak checks. There's a little bit of margin built into that, but of course, they'll be delaying that undocking about 20 minutes. There's not a one-for-one impact to that splashdown time. They can make it up in the phasing and still splash down right at the time, Andy, that you reported, 1:06 p.m. Eastern Time off the coast of Florida. Within this window right now that we're in, it's about a 90-minute window for undocking. This is not like the instantaneous launch window that we typically see for launch. There's a lot of flexibility here, and of course we can make it up with the phasing to get our crew members home. Now, they've gone through a lot of steps so far. They've gone through the leak checks of their suits, which was A-OK. You're hearing a bit of the communication checks. They've been doing that for several hours now, making sure that everything's okay. Looks like they're still working through some of the items with the commander seat, and they'll continue to do so just up until the time of undocking. There's a time after the window for checking the leak in between the vestibule that they will perform a go, no-go poll for all of the flight control teams, including the International Space Station teams. It also includes the SpaceX and Axiom teams. Make sure everybody's go for a docking, for an undocking rather, at 8:15 p.m. Central Time tonight. Now, once we get to that point, once we get to that go, and we actually initiate the command, that command expected to be initiated about 8:10 p.m. Central Time, 6:10 p.m. Pacific, that starts a sequence for undocking, including umbilical retraction and the 12 hooks that are currently holding the Dragon to the International Space Station to be released 6 at a time. There's a couple of undocking burns. They're short little pulses to actually physically separate the Dragon from the International Space Station, and then a couple of departure burns to get outside what's called the keep out sphere, and of course what was mentioned prior, the approach ellipsoid. The approach ellipsoid about 1 kilometer away from the International Space Station and signifies the end of joint operations, officially NASA's role in all of this, and really we'll be handing it off to the SpaceX teams after that. Following along live, you can see the views here of the Dragon Endeavour docked to the zenith or space-facing side, the crew eagerly awaiting the next steps to get them home. And of course, we got a lot to uncover. We're still in that holding period right now for the leak checks, and we'll hold on to that for a while. That's expected for another maybe 10-15 minutes before we can go ahead and proceed for that poll to go for undocking. Andy, like you said, the weather's looking pretty great for tomorrow, so we're still trying to undock today. We got that 90-minute window, lots of flexibility for the teams, and we'll be following along every step of the way. We're here in Mission Control Houston going through the steps for undocking the AX1 crew from the International Space Station, concluding their long and very productive stay on board the International Space Station. But for now, while we're in this period of monitoring the depressurization, making sure everything's good, why don't we toss it back to Hawthorne for a little bit, and of course we'll continue to stay here. But Andy and Tricia, back to you.
Thanks, Gary. As the crew continues to prepare for undocking, let's get to know the crew a little bit better. So first up, Michael López-Alegría. Serving as commander for this mission is Michael López-Alegría, a veteran of 3 space shuttle flights, 1 Soyuz flight, and numerous spacewalks. MLA is no stranger to spaceflight. This is not his first trip to the International Space Station. In fact, his last one was Expedition 14, where he also served as mission commander. Let's take a closer look at the commander of AX1, Michael López-Alegría.
Michael, first time the feeling was when you got outside of the space shuttle. What was that feeling like?
And to those just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our live, continuous, uninterrupted coverage of the hatch closure and undocking of AX1 at the International Space Station. As you heard just a few minutes ago, undocking delayed about 20 minutes. This is due to the Seat 2 commander having some issues with his push to talk. Spashdown, though, not affected, as Dragon is a very smart vehicle and it can adjust its phasing burns to make sure that Dragon is in the right place at the right time to do its re-entry burn and bring that crew home. But if it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at TLP, and here at the Launchpad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're here to answer your questions live. So if you have a question, send that to us in the chat. Just tag us at the Launchpad, and we'll be answering those as we go through today's broadcast. And we hope you'll join us live tomorrow, as well as we watch Dragon bring the first ever fully private crew of the International Space Station home, targeting splashdown 1:06 p.m. Eastern. They're targeting the furthest northeast landing site, splashdown zone, near Jacksonville, Florida, but all 7 zones are still in review. for possibility tomorrow. Water swelling 2 to 3 meters, so a little bit higher, but something that they are able to still bring the crew home in. So we're monitoring that situation. If you haven't yet, follow us over here over on Twitter at TLPN_official. You can join us over on our Discord, and don't forget to check us out over on our shop. Also, we're really excited to say we are expanding our team, so if you're interested in joining the TLP crew, applications are now open, so you can check that out and go from there. We got lots of people hanging out in live comms. We got Ty, Joker, Kathy, Marcus, Mike, Samantha, and myself, so join us over on the Discord and live comms if you want to hang out and chat there. But we're going to resume listening into SpaceX Mission Control and the comms net as we await to see how they continue to deal with the communication issues with one of the seats and move towards undocking at 9:15 p.m. Eastern. Stay with us right here on the launch pad.
Connor, who is AX1's pilot.
Station in Endeavour on Space to Ground 2, the big loop. We've just had a ROWI issue come up. We just want to verify that we've got good comm checks on the big loop from Houston. How do you copy?
It has you loud and clear, Houston on 2.
Houston Endeavour, loud and clear.
All right, excellent. Thank you both very much.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, nominal vestibule depressurization and leak check.
SpaceX Endeavour, nominal vestibule depress. And leak check.
International Space Station and since have gone through more than 25 of their experiments. They conducted a number of outreach activities, reaching out to kids and organizations around the globe, and are now just getting ready to get home. While we were running those packages, we did hear that the leak check itself looked very good. So the vestibule in between the two hatches is down to vacuum. It was a good leak check. So now we'll just move on to the next sequence of steps. The main one is the go, no go poll. If everything looks good weather-wise, which it is continuing to trend in a positive direction, the leak check was good. They're still working through making sure the communications are good. They'll do a poll just to make sure that they are ready to undock, and then they'll go ahead and initiate the command to start that sequence. That sequence is set to start here in about 10 minutes, and then that will start a 5-minute sequence until the Dragon itself physically separates from the International Space Station. Right now, the Dragon is connected by umbilical. We have the umbilicals are providing power and data to the SpaceX Dragon, and it is secured to the station by 12 hooks. What we'll see is the umbilical itself retract, then relying on the Dragon vehicle for the environmental control and life support systems, for the battery and power, and then of course for the communications, and then the hooks will start to retract. There's 12 hooks. They'll retract 6 at a time. And then they'll conduct a couple of pulse burns. They're called undocking burns, just really short firings of the Dragon's Draco thrusters to physically separate the Dragon from the International Space Station. Then we'll go into a couple of departure burns, namely departure burn 0 and 1, each just lasting a couple of seconds, and that will take the Dragon outside of the keep-out sphere and then behind the International Space Station to get eventually below, and then start a couple of phasing burns to get in the right orientation, ready for that landing off the coast of Florida. Again, we're 20 minutes behind, so we're looking at that undocking sequence to start at 8:10 p.m. Central Time, with the physical separation targeted for 8:15 p.m. Central Time. And then they'll be able to catch up through some of the phasing to stick with that landing time that we advertised a little bit after 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop for
This is Mission Control Houston. We
SpaceX Endeavour on the big loop.
Okay, Endeavour, the final reconfigurations for undock are complete and nominal. Ground has pulled go for undocking at a targeted time of 0105 UTC. We were able to pull that ahead a little bit. Please confirm that your visors are down, your feet are secure in the footrests, and that crew are ready for undock and departure at the planned time.
SpaceX Endeavour, we are go for undock, and visors are down, restraints and feet secured.
SpaceX copies all.
Mike, point of clarification, when can we expect to have a camera view?
And standby 1, that should be as soon as we command the undocking sequence.
Okay, as soon as we command undocking, standing by.
Undock sequence commanded. Umbilical demate complete and nominal. First set of hooks open and nominal. All hooks open and nominal. Dragon separation confirmed. Depart 0 burn complete and nominal.
That's good undock burns in the first departure burn. Depart burn 0 looking good. Depart burn 1 coming up in about 5 minutes. That undocking time was 8:10 p.m. Central Time, 6:10 p.m. Pacific. The International Space Station was 262 statute miles over the South Atlantic Ocean, west off the coast of Africa. Flight controllers are tracking a good departure of SpaceX Dragon Endeavour and the AX1 crew inside. Everything's looking good. They're 45 meters away from the International Space Station, slowly separating. We're coming up on 4 minutes past the undocking time of the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour and the AX1 crew. Undocking just 4 minutes ago. We're expecting that next depart burn coming up in a little bit more than a minute and a half. That'll be depart burn 1 that will send the crew out of the keep out sphere, which is a 200-meter zone around the International Space Station with its own set of flight rules. It'll continue to coast outside of the keep out sphere after that depart burn 1 to the approach ellipsoid. The approach ellipsoid about 1 kilometer away. Once it exits the approach ellipsoid, that ends the joint operations of the International Space Station teams that you see here in Mission Control Houston. It'll be SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne and the Axiom Space teams that'll have the responsibility of taking the crew from the approach ellipsoid down to a safe landing off the coast of Florida. And we're just a few seconds away from the next departure burn. Trajectory is looking good, about a little less than 10 seconds. There you see it. We got confirmation that Depart Burn 1 has started. You're seeing those Draco engines firing. This is about a 20-second firing.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Depart 1 burn is complete and nominal. At this time, you do have a go to dock your suits per procedure 4.012. As a reminder, ground will be deactivating the big loop following exit from the approach ellipsoid.
SpaceX Endeavour, copy all, proceeding to 4.012.
Good readback.
And you heard her, that's a good Depart Burn 1. This burn is the last that will take them out of the keep out sphere and the approach ellipsoid, which you heard mentioned on the communications to the crew. In the meantime, it means that a lot of the flight rules for having those suits on during this particularly dynamic phase of flight with the undocking burns separating from the International Space Station, that has concluded, so they're good to take off their suits. It's a 16-hour ride home, so they'll want to be comfortable, get out of those suits and stretch. In the meantime, they'll continue to monitor, of course. We're getting some views, though intermittent, from the inside the Dragon cabin, and they'll be able to move about the cabin, have a meal, and even rest.
SpaceX Endeavour, understand cameras external.
We just got confirmation the Dragon...
Station Houston on the big loop. Dragon has exited the keep out sphere.
Station copies.
So you heard it called up to the crew. The 4-member private astronaut crew have exited the keep out sphere. It'll be at about another 13 minutes or so until they exit the approach ellipsoid and officially end joint operations. Now, we'll end our coverage after the approach ellipsoid exit, but the crew's journey, of course, has only just begun. You heard that there will be doffing off their suits or taking them off. That gets them nice and comfortable for the 16-hour commute that they have from the International Space Station down to a splashdown off the coast of Florida. They undocked just west off the coast of Africa. They'll do a couple of orbits of the Earth, and then, of course, splashdown off the eastern coast. Their primary splashdown target for this opportunity is Jacksonville, Florida, but they have a couple of backup opportunities identified as well. The teams will be constantly monitoring weather, making sure that it's okay. As you know, weather has been uncooperative for the past couple of days to get our crew members home, but looking at the weather for tomorrow afternoon, Monday the 25th, things are looking good, trending in the right direction, but teams, of course, will continue to monitor. The Axiom crew is just a little less than 400 meters from the International Space Station. They're cruising right now. That was the last departure burn that we saw, departure burn 1. They're really in a coast phase now to get them out of the approach ellipsoid, and then they'll go through a series of additional departure burns and phasing burns to get them in the right orientation for a splashdown off the coast of Florida. Andy and Trisha, I don't know if you guys were watching, but it was absolutely incredible to see the Axiom crew undock from the International Space Station, especially during a nighttime. You really got to see those Draco engines light up. It was truly astounding from this end. Let's toss it over to Hawthorne, Trisha, and Andy. I wonder what your perspective was now seeing that the Axiom crew has undocked from the International Space Station, concluding their stay at the orbiting laboratory.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, it certainly was very exciting to watch the Dragon undock from the space station. Things are looking great right now. The crew is on their way to exiting the approach ellipsoid. And so after, about 15 days aboard the International Space Station, the first all-private astronaut crew is wrapping their mission that began just over 16 days ago now. It's been a mission full of scientific and outreach objectives with the overall goal of expanding space access to a wider global audience. The historic mission began on April 8th with the launch of our AX1 crew in the Crew Dragon Endeavour from Kennedy Space Center's Launch Pad 39A. Endeavour then made its approach to the ISS, culminating in a successful dock to the Zenith port. The crew, those are some really great shots of the Crew Dragon on Launch Pad 39A. It was a beautiful day and a gorgeous view there of the Dragon approaching the ISS. The crew, after they docked, was then welcomed by the Expedition 67 crew in the official welcome ceremony. And from there, they jumped right into their busy schedule, then maximized every bit of their time for scientific and outreach objectives. Some of it involved getting used to this entirely new environment. The crew had, over 700 hours of training to prepare for their life on orbit, but when it becomes a reality, it certainly takes some time getting used to it. For example, the fluids behave in a much different way. You have to figure out how to move your body around in a zero-gravity environment. So, there is a period of time to get used to it. The crew's time on station also included observations conducted from the cupola, which has a beautiful view of the Earth. There you can see a gorgeous view of the horizon and some gorgeous views of the auroras right above it. The crew was also able to film some of their day-to-day aspects of on-orbit life. You can see a food storage bag there with all different kinds of meals available for them to eat. I like the peanut butter can right there. These day-to-day aspects are exactly part of what they were able to show in the numerous outreach events that they held on orbit. Larry, Eytan, and Mark held several outreach events with students from many different schools and museums. MLA called an international committee conference to order, and Eytan spoke with the Israeli president while on orbit, highlighting Israel's return to spaceflight after Ilan Ramon, the first Israeli astronaut to fly, and marking Eytan as the first Israeli astronaut to be on the ISS. These kinds of events are critical to raising awareness and excitement for the future of spaceflight in future generations. Also, it's just, really cool to be able to talk to an astronaut real time while they're 250 miles above you in space. Now, additionally, one of the primary objectives of this mission was research and technology demonstrations. For example, the first ever successful demonstration of two-way holoportation shown by Mark there, which will enhance telemedicine efforts and help facilitate deep space missions. Additionally, optical lens experiments conducted by Eytan that you see on the screen there, the precision in manufacturing that they can achieve in zero gravity significantly bolsters deep space astronomy research efforts. Eytan also led a neuro-wellness technology demonstration to monitor brain activity. And they also had the Astro Skin Vest demonstrations worn by Mark, which will directly inform new detection techniques for problems with heart, lung, and circulation systems. The mission wasn't only about science and outreach, though. The arts played a big role as well. MLA and prodigy pianist Blackbach made music in space history when they performed a keyboard and piano duet of an original composition. Eytan also displays here a beautiful ring specifically designed for microgravity. And those were just some of the highlights of the trip, and there was so much more accomplished than what was able to be shown in that video. We'd probably be here for the next 15 days if we went through in detail. But for those of you who are interested, please check out the URL axiomspace.com/AX1-research for an inside look into exactly what they were able to accomplish while on orbit.
Yeah, that was some really cool clips. I really liked MLA eating or I guess drinking or eating the ball of orange juice,
Yeah.
and that space ring looked super cool. For now, Dragon is continuing to exit and distance itself from the International Space Station. We're going to check back in with Gary at in Houston, Texas for updates. Gary?
Hey, thanks Andy and Tricia. Really great to see a lot of the activities that they performed on board the International Space Station. It was truly a sprint. When we talk about long duration stays aboard the International Space Station, it's really a marathon. 6 months is a very long time, and they got a lot of experiments to do, but it's not to shy away from the amount of activities that were accomplished on board the AX1 mission. Lots of science, lots of outreach activities. They truly did a lot, and of course that journey is now coming to an end. So far, the trajectory looks very good for the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour and the AX1 crew separating from the International Space Station. Exit of the approach ellipsoid is just minutes away. They safely exited the keep out sphere, and we did hear confirmation that 2 of the 4 astronauts are already out of their suits, and they're going to start drying them to make sure that they're nice and comfortable for when they re-don them for the next dynamic phase of this flight, which is of course the re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere and splashing down off the coast of Florida. In the meantime, we'll follow from here in Mission Control Houston to make sure that they safely exit the approach ellipsoid, and we'll stand by for confirmation of that. And then of course from then we'll wrap up our coverage, but we'll be monitoring every step of the way with really the prime responsibility over with SpaceX and with Axiom Space. This is a live look from the flight control teams over in Hawthorne. They'll be monitoring the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour and the AX1 crew through the 16-hour journey until they're safely returned to Earth. We just got confirmation the approach ellipsoid exit is expected in about a minute. From there, the teams you're seeing on the screen will take full control over the SpaceX vehicle and the crew inside. Right now, still in joint operations with the International Space Station flight control teams here in Houston, just making sure they exit from the vicinity of the International Space Station. That approach ellipsoid, it's more like 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers is the exact specifications of that true ellipsoid. So we'll stand by for confirmation once they've exited that space. And with that, we have confirmation. The AX1 crew has officially exited the approach
ellipsoid. Joining SpaceX on the big loop, Dragon has exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a safe free drift trajectory. Houston will be taking down the big loop shortly. Expect ISS audio traffic to cease. We hope you enjoyed your time with your hosts on Crew 3, and we're looking forward to getting you home. At this time, we also request swapping any audio destinations back to Dragon to ground when able.
Copy all, Mike. Break. Laura, you and the team there in Houston, thanks once again for all the support through this amazing adventure that we've had, even longer and more exciting than we thought. We really appreciate your professionalism, and with that, we'll sign off.
All right, you heard it, folks. The AX1 crew has exited the approach ellipsoid. They are officially outside of the jurisdiction of the International Space Station. It's truly up to the teams at SpaceX and Axiom Space to get these guys home. You heard those congratulatory words from the commander of the mission, Michael López-Alegría, commending the work of the NASA teams and, of course, the teams at SpaceX and Axiom for their wonderful stay, an extended stay at that. 15 days aboard the orbiting laboratory. They got a lot to experience and, of course, a lot to share when they get to the ground. They're on a 24-hour safe trajectory right now, which means that if anything were to go wrong, they would be in a good course not to intersect or any conjunctions that are in the way. So everything's looking good on that end. So with that, from here in Mission Control Houston, we will conclude our coverage of this mission and truly hand it over to the teams at SpaceX and Axiom Space. It's been a wonderful ride. I've been very close personally to this mission, working very hard to make sure that they've been able to execute all of their activities on board, and it's been a true honor to be a part of this mission and through all of the 15 days. A lot has happened, and it's really the beginning of something greater. This is the first mission of its kind, and NASA's goal is to see more missions like this. Private astronaut missions will be the customer demand in the future for NASA to be eventually one of many customers working side by side with private astronauts on commercial destinations. Folks, this is just the beginning of that era, and it was truly an honor to be a part of it. With that, that'll wrap up our coverage from here in Mission Control Houston. To Trisha and Andy, I'll toss it over to you guys in Hawthorne to bring us home. Thanks for having us be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Well put. Thanks for walking us through the joint operations portions of the mission. Now that Michael, Larry, Mark, and Eytan have departed the International Space Station, it's going to take them about 16 hours until they make their way back to Earth. Next up, the crew will continue to doff their spacesuits and get a little bit more comfy for flight. In about an hour, they will get ready for a rest period that will last for about 10 hours, 8 hours for actual sleeping, and a couple hours for pre- and post-sleep activities. As they rest, our teams here will continue to keep an eye on the weather to ensure a safe return to Earth for Dragon and the AX1 crew.
And should the current projections hold, starting at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, Monday, April 25th, Axiom and SpaceX will pick back up with live coverage of the conclusion of this AX1 mission. Should teams need to adjust the timing of Spashdown, it is our plan to go live about an hour before Spashdown occurs. For the latest on the timing of this final stage of the AX1 journey, be sure to visit axiomspace.com, and you can track Dragon's flight on spacex.com/launches. From all of us at Axiom Space, thank you to NASA for the incredible efforts made on this mission towards the shared goal of opening low Earth orbit for commercial endeavors, and thank you for tuning in. We look forward to sharing the culmination of this mission with you soon.
And there we go. The AX1 crew has departed the International Space Station and are making their way home back to Florida. Currently targeting splashdown zone of Jacksonville, the furthest northeast of the 7 recovery zones, 4 in the Atlantic and 3 in the Atlantic and 4 in the Gulf. Weather's still looking good, but crews will make the ultimate decision of which zone they're committing to with the re-entry burn tomorrow morning. We're going to be going live tomorrow morning. That event is already scheduled, so we hope you will join us for that. If you haven't yet, join us over on the Discord. We will be hanging out in live comms right now, talking about undocking, watching a Red Bull plane event, and just talking about space. You're welcome to join us there. Make sure you follow us over on Twitter so you never miss another space news update as things happen, and consider checking out our shop if you want to get some of your very own space gear. Really helps support us and gets you some really awesome items there. Virginia, when will you be streaming Splashdown? Tomorrow morning we will be going live. Let me double check the time here so I quote it to you guys correctly. Bunch of windows open. We will be going live at or at least we're targeting to go live at 12 p.m. Eastern time, so about an hour before Splashdown. We may go live a little bit earlier depending on access from SpaceX, so make sure you've turned your notifications on so you don't miss that. That live event is already scheduled. We'll drop the link in the chat so you can head over there, click set reminder, and then you'll get notified on when that does go live. Following this, you're all going to be sent over to our Artemis live stream where you'll be able to see SLS out on pad 39B as it awaits its rollback to the vehicle assembly building for some repairs. But that is going to do it for us here tonight. Here at the launch pad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And the first ever fully private crew of the International Space Station has departed and is on their way home. Splashdown expected to occur tomorrow at 1:06 p.m. Eastern. We'll be live about an hour before that, and we hope you'll join us then. But for now, this is Zach from the TLP Network Studios signing off. We'll see you next time. Good night.